Hi, welcome to the Ellis Talker Show. My name is DV LeBron, and today my very special guest is Miss Lauren Callahan, who came on to talk about gut health in women and just in general gut health. How are you doing, ma'am?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me.
So I saw that I saw your thing on one of the things where we look for folks, and I was so caught up by there's been always these different reels and these different things about how much your gut affects you, and then especially in women and how that affects them. So I wanted to have you on and kind of talk about that. So I appreciate you coming on. Can you tell my audience more about you?
Yeah, for sure. So, I am the owner of Goddess Health and the author of the book Powerful Not Tired, in which I talk about gut health and Reiki and what I call the Goddess First principles. So that's basically self-care, and I can explain that a little bit more. But basically, I work with women, usually in midlife, who have gone to the doctor, and the doctor tells them everything is normal, and they're like, "Hell no, everything is not normal."
Yeah, I bet that happens.
Yeah. So I help them get back to a place where they actually have energy again, where they're sleeping again, where they don't feel like they're walking around in a constant bad mood, right? They're not getting sick all the time anymore.
How did you embark in this journey, Lauren?
Yeah, it started with running for me. So I'm a runner. I'm an ultra runner and an Ironman athlete. And I was at a point where I struggled for 4 years to run a marathon. And I was nearing 40. I'm a decently healthy person. I was training. Eat well. There was no real reason why I should have so much trouble. And yet I was always coming into problems with inflammation, recovery, repetitive injury. Um, and I began to hear a lot about the gut and how scientists are calling the gut your second brain. And because it's related to everything, your mood, your energy, immunity, gastrointestinal issues, certainly. God, brain fog. I mean, it's related to everything. And I started hearing stories about athletes in particular who would improve their gut health and they wouldn't have trouble with repetitive injury anymore. And I thought, well, isn't that good marketing? So
Yeah.
you're telling me improving my gut is going to help me with my knee.
Yeah.
So, I was a little skeptical for sure. But, I was curious and I kept coming back to the question, what if all of the healthy things I'm doing for myself, especially what I'm eating, what if it doesn't matter because my gut is not healthy enough to receive it? And that was one of the best questions that I ever could have asked myself, because I went and tested my gut health, which is one of the first things that I do for all of my clients, and found out that my gut was in horrible condition, even though I was doing all the healthy things and my doctor was telling me everything's normal. So I took about 6 months to improve my gut health, to heal my gut. And after that, after struggling for 4 years to run a marathon, I went out and I ran my first marathon. And
Wow.
yeah, and not only that though, just a couple months after that, I ran my first 50-mile ultra. And then I completed my first Ironman right after that. And then I did another 50-mile ultra and another Ironman and 100K, that's 62 miles. And I did that all within 1 year. And
Mm.
so, how did this happen for me? Certainly in healing my gut opened up amazing doors for me athletically and, for something that I love. But within that process, there were so many moments along the way where I was like, wait a minute, I'm not having trouble sleeping anymore. And I didn't
Wow.
do anything other than improve my gut health. And I'd have another moment where I'd say, wait a minute, I am not depressed and anxious and having mood issues like I used to. And that's saying a lot because I was a therapist at the time. I had all the tools, right?
Yeah. You
And
had
it's
all
not
the
like I
tools.
did more therapy, I did, and a lot of those things just went away. Certainly had more injury, gastrointestinal problems that I just come to accept as normal. All of a sudden, they just weren't there anymore, right? So many things that had been a problem were not a problem anymore. So
So
that's how I got on gut health.
I mean, and it's just you made me tired just listing off all these things. I just recently took up boxing again, and I mean, I am the fat boy there, and I am just it's sweating, and I could barely throw a couple of punches. It's pretty bad. So you're talking about 50 Ks, and I'm like, man, I just wow. So it's awesome that you were able to find this, but I mean, is it what are the common mistakes that women are making? Is it just diet? Is it should they be eating? There's always a health craze. You want to go whole wheat, or you want to go gluten free, or you want to go that. There's always something. So what is the common mistake that you see that women are doing when it comes to their gut health?
That's a great question. There are a few that come up again and again and again. So one is exactly what you said, like those fad kind of things that come up. I'm not saying there aren't individual cases, because there are. Your gut health is very different from mine, likely. Everybody's gut is an individual sort of thing. But in general, your gut really likes balance. So, when you go on a kick of, I am going to cut out all carbs, or, an entire food group of sorts, um, or I am only going to eat within a 4-hour window, or something like that,
Mhm.
that is out of balance. In general, your gut doesn't like that. Um, Women in particular, I would say women are more aware these days of their need for protein, right? But often that gets turned into, okay, so I'm going to have a protein shake. And I'm not saying protein shakes and protein bars are, terrible. But actually they're a low quality protein. And so I find what a lot of women are doing are getting, in the cycle of just every day kind of relying on a protein shake. Men do this too. Okay.
Mhm.
um,
Yep.
Relying on some kind of protein shaker bar to get in their protein needs. And actually it often works against them whenever they're doing too much of it. It works against them as far as their gut health goes.
So,
Yeah, go ahead.
so when your gut health when you talk about the disbalance, what does that disbalance look like? Is it the same like if I when people take probiotics, is that an attempt to get gut health right? And what does good gut health look like?
Yeah, so as far as the probiotics go, your gut likes fermented foods usually, and a probiotic is usually it's often like a substitute for a fermented food. Actually, often probiotics are usually a good thing. Again, maybe not necessarily for everybody, which is another reason why I test, right? So that we know exactly what's going on. But yeah, a probiotic can support the population and diversity of bacteria in your gut, which is a good thing. Your gut loves bacteria. So yeah, that can be one thing that supports good gut health. As far as what good gut health looks like, I'd almost take that question backwards. How do you know that your gut is not in good shape? And that actually can look a million different ways. And so this is kind of a vague answer, but you have to consider that, again, the gut is your second brain, right? And it's called that. Scientists are calling the gut your second brain because it is related to everything: your mood, your energy, your gastrointestinal health, your immunity, energy levels, cognitive clarity, like everything. I mean, think about chronic diseases, chronic illnesses. Every health outcome you can think about is connected to your gut. And so, really for me, the question is does anything feel off? If it does, I would check your gut. And I don't mean to make that sound like it's this magical, solution.
Mhm.
But the thing is, it's pervasive, right? Like if you hit your head and went into your doctor and said, went to your doctor and said, I'm having trouble sleeping, and I'm cranky all the time, they wouldn't just say, okay, well, here's something for your sleep and for not feeling cranky. It would say, okay, what happened when you hit your head, right? Because your brain is connected to everything. And it's the same thing with your gut, right? When anything is off, I would say, let's check your gut and see first what's going on.
You were talking about a test. Tell me about that test.
Yeah, it's actually a really simple test. It's not a stool sample. I'm sure there are different ways to test your gut, but the group that I partner with is just a very simple blood test. You get it in the mail, you prick your finger, you mail it off, and then I work with the dietitians there who are trained in gut health to interpret your results and to come up with, to show exactly where you're at and to come up with basically a roadmap that shows you how to heal your gut.
Is there like specific chemical when you get this blood panel back? Is it like a genetic test? Is it showing you like your gut probably has this much of this and this little of that? Is it that kind of test or?
It actually tests 11 different gut metabolites. And so there are a lot of gut metabolites, but there are 11 that again and again and again show up in the research as connected to just about every health outcome you can think of. So when we get these results back, I'm looking at 11 different gut metabolites, and basically the results get broken down into, is that metabolite within its optimal zone, or is it below or above? And how do we get it back to its optimal zone? And also, there's a lot in those results about why it matters. Okay, so for example, one of the things that really surprised me when I started this process is that serotonin is a gut metabolite. Now,
Oh,
again, I was a therapist, right? I'm familiar with serotonin as a
right.
neurotransmitter that's associated with your mood, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you go to the doctor and say I'm depressed, you will likely get prescribed an SSRI antidepressant, like one of those S's standing for serotonin. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. This kind of goes back to the misconceptions that we were talking about gut health. Um, I'm not saying don't take an SSRI. Okay. This is not that conversation. That's an individual conversation. Okay. But what I am saying is that an SSRI actually changes up the way your body produces serotonin, and it moves it from your gut to your brain. So it may help with your mood, but actually it creates a host of other issues within your gut, because serotonin further breaks down into melatonin, which helps you sleep. Serotonin is hugely responsible for your for your digestion, which is related to your gastrointestinal health, but hugely responsible for initiating digestion. So you can imagine if you take the serotonin out, now you're having gas and bloating, possibly leaky gut. We're talking about immunity issues now, because as soon as you get leaky gut, your body wants to attack everything. It thinks you're sick all the time. Again, mood and sleep, we're not falling asleep at night. This was one of the things when I improved my gut health, I found out that my serotonin was incredibly low, which I was like, oh my God, I'm a therapist. What do you mean my serotonin's low? Right? I'm helping people every day heal from depression, anxiety, and everything else. So when I improved my gut health, my serotonin just went up. I could feel it. I could feel that I was not depressed the way that I used to be. I could feel that I could fall asleep at night. And it was simply because serotonin was where it needed to be. So I think I forget the original question here, but we were talking about gut metabolites that actually
Yeah.
get tested. That's one of 11, right?
Yeah, and so this affects because one of the things that I hear often is, I went into this room and forgot why I went into this room. I'm walking around in a fog, or an explosion of attention deficit. And I'm not going to say ADD because ADD is a real thing, but it's a feeling of that with a lot of people, a lot of ladies, especially as they're getting older. So you're
Mhm.
finding that some of the things in the gut affect that.
Yeah, absolutely. So your gut is very much related to your cognitive clarity. Brain fog is a very real thing, like you said, especially for women as they age. And that has to do with our change in hormones. It just is going to happen, right? And so if your gut health is off, yeah, brain fog is going to be an incredible issue for you, as is, a lot of things, right? Like stress is a problem for, anybody. Like stress is the number one thing that's going to kill you, right?
Right.
Um, but with women in particular, you've got some very specific issues that are going on with your hormones. So, for example, without, maybe geeking out too long on it,
No, that's
um,
fine.
that
I'm
get, I mean,
learning. I'm learning.
this. So, okay. So for example, as a woman ages, her estrogen and progesterone levels are going to decline. Okay. Estrogen in and of itself is an anti-inflammatory. So a woman, by simply existing in
Hmm.
midlife and beyond, she is like a living inflammatory process, right? So there are so many things going on in your gut that regulate and minimize inflammation. Or, if you're not treating your gut well, that will exacerbate that inflammation, and you'll have all kinds of health problems, right? That seem not related at all to your gut, but it comes back to that inflammation that's happening. The other thing is progesterone. So progesterone is also declining for women. And progesterone is like, when you think about all the perimenopause and menopause symptoms, kind of the classic stuff, progesterone is usually behind that, or declining progesterone is usually behind that.
The hot
Um,
flashes and all that.
yeah, exactly. So a woman's progesterone production is actually going to move as she ages from her ovaries to her adrenals. Now, if you think about that, your adrenals are also responsible for a lot of other hormones that you produce, including cortisol, your stress hormone. So here's my point through that, when coming back around to, how stress in particular affects everybody, but, I'm kind of focusing on women here. If your body has a choice to process either cortisol or progesterone, it will choose cortisol, because cortisol, which is the stress hormone, to your body, that's a fight or flight response. Okay, that is life or death. So your body is going to say, okay, hot flashes are fine. I just need to keep you alive right now. Okay.
Right.
So it, in a sense, like, kicks out that progesterone. Okay. So, bringing it back around to gut health, I can test your gut today, and I can look at one specific gut metabolite that tells me how much stress is in your body. And that is physical stress. Maybe you're overtraining boxing or whatever you're doing, right? Or mental or emotional stress, right? Um, there's a gut metabolite that will show where you're at, and give us a good direction on what we need to do, so that you're not always in this low level, fight or flight, flood of cortisol kind of production, low level inflammation, that affects every other aspect of your health.
So a lady sends you that blood sample and you've got the results in. What does that conversation look like with that person once you've gotten that blood result? And then how do you move to improve that gut? I know everybody's different, but kind of give me a generalized, like you're like, say, okay, now you're going to start eating more bread and eating less, or is it something like that? Can you talk about that process?
Sure. Yeah. So that conversation for me is actually going to last 4 months. Okay. Because there, it just about never happens where I look at, gut health test results and say, here's what you need to do. And then a person just goes and does it, and then they're better. Like, we're human beings. We're not robots. We just don't work that way. Right.
Okay.
So from beginning to end, I will test a person's gut health. That takes out about 90% of the guesswork on what needs to happen to heal your gut. And then what happens is we take recommendations from a dietitian, and from that report, as far as what needs to happen to improve your gut health. And that will include nutrition, for sure. Nutrition is primary. But as we have kind of already alluded to, it encompasses everything, right? Like, if your major issue is stress, which I will tell you, it is never not. Like, I've never
Right.
worked with somebody
Hmm.
where their test results were like, you're not stressed, you're fine. That has never happened. So
Yeah.
um so we look at those things too, right? Like, reducing stress in your life. For a lot of people, improving or starting, or perfecting, maybe, a fitness or movement or training routine. We do that because certainly your fitness, your exercise, your training, that is related to your gut health, in a huge way. And so a lot of women need to either start that or improve it or add certain elements to it. So we do that. And then, there's a lot of different practices we usually end up doing, to reduce inflammation, kind of for what I talked about a minute ago. I mean, the whole, like, if you're a woman in midlife and beyond, you're a living inflammatory process. So we do a lot to reduce inflammation, a lot of practices around that. Also, I do Reiki. So I bring Reiki into my practice. That's an energy healing practice. I do distance Reiki. A lot of people are familiar with Reiki, as an in-person is an in-person practice where a Reiki practitioner channels energy through their hands, and that brings healing and balance on all levels: physical, emotional, mental. But Reiki, little known fact, Reiki can also be done at a distance, and so it allows me to work with people all over the world. It's very powerful, it's very effective, and for me, this is like an added bringing gut health and your overall health and performance to the next level. And so that is also part of that 4-month-long conversation, that 4-month-long process that we do. And then also at the end, I retest. So we know what has gotten better, what hasn't worked. How can we set you up for success moving forward?
How pervasive is this in that you've seen now that you've gotten in this? How pervasive is this problem in women, and let's say women from 40 to 50?
I just love that you use that word. It's pervasive. Like, that's exactly the word that I would say. Um, you know, I haven't haven't met somebody who said, "Let me try this out," and there wasn't like a gut health issue, right? Or a
Mhm.
person that doesn't benefit from Reiki. It just touches everything. And the thing is, there are so many medical professionals out there who just do a wonderful job with trying to get to the root cause of something, get to the source. But I would say on the whole, that gut health and Reiki both bring a pervasive sort of healing that sometimes, medical professionals just can't touch, right?
Mhm.
Or maybe it's just not so obvious, right? Like, again, if you came and said, "Hey, I can't fall asleep at night," or I'm having repetitive injuries in my knee, like, whose first thought is, "Okay, let's check your gut," right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not our natural thinking yet, right? And
Mhm.
so I would say that this is pervasive, because improving your gut health is going to improve all other health outcomes for you. And then Reiki as well is healing and balance on all levels, and it's wherever you need it most, right? So the problem is pervasive, but also these healing modalities are pervasive, which is why these are the ones that I camp on.
Now, Lauren, and it's not to brag, but I want you to tell my audience about a situation where it was particularly bad that you were working with somebody, and where the outcome came out better. I want you to talk about maybe that one story where really like you saw it completely work.
Yeah, so the one person that's coming to mind for me, God, I've got a few, like, choose one.
It's okay.
um, one lady in particular, she is one who, maybe is a good representation of the kind of person that comes to me often, and that is someone who really is trying to do all the things, to the best of their understanding, to be healthy, right? They do the things to eat healthy and to take care of their bodies, and again, to the best of their knowledge. And they go to their doctor and they just say something isn't right, and their doctor tells them everything's normal, right? We've done the blood work, we've done whatever, everything's normal. But she comes to me and she says, "I'm tired all the time." That's the other thing I hear a ton. "I'm tired all the time. I'm not feeling super motivated." She's an endurance athlete too. She said, "I'm not super motivated." She gets so bloated that she can barely drink water. Like, water bloats her, right? Like, bloating and gas, like, this is a midlife women issue as well, right? Bathroom issues, like, this is a midlife woman issue, right? So she's got a lot of this. And certainly she's stressed, right?
Hmm.
So we check out her gut health, right? Um, and we find a few key things, certainly, on why she's getting so bloated. And so she's been struggling with this for years. So I think the biggest success was just seeing how she had tried a million different things, done a lot of the healthy things, and then once we got the results back, it was like, "Oh, okay, this is what you need to be doing." And I think one of the most surprising things that came out of that, though, I feel like with every person that I work with, there's always a little surprise, unexpected outcome, right? And the one that came up for her was, she said, well, what we saw was that her uric acid was high. So uric acid is another gut metabolite.
Yeah.
Now, often, yeah, uric acid is going
Hmm.
to be high in men who drink a lot of beer and have a lot of steak, right? Like this is where you
Hmm.
tend to see those high numbers. Like, hello,
Yeah.
right? We should check that out, by the way.
Let's do it.
So, but for her, this is not the case. Like, no three of those factors are true for her. She's not a man. She does not drink beer, and she does not eat steak. Right.
Hmm.
So, we put the whole report together and we figure out, what is likely leading to her high uric acid. But I think the really cool moment is when we saw that, and she said, "Oh my god." I've been going to my doctor. He tells me everything's normal, but I've also been going to my physical therapist because my feet just hurt. And I remember she's an endurance athlete. Okay, like it's
Hmm.
a real problem for her feet to be hurting. And she said my feet just hurt, and I don't know why. And he tells me everything's normal. And she said, here it is. My uric acid is high. I've got gout. She had inflammation in her feet. And so this was something that nobody else, was catching, right? But just simply looking at her gut health, we immediately knew what was going on, and how to fix that. So that was one really cool story.
Well, it's awesome when you get to help people. The last thing I want to ask you is there's a lot of conversations in this country because autism is on the rise, kids with special needs are on the rise, and ADHD, dyslexia, all these various different things is on the rise. And have you treated somebody with this gut health approach that maybe would fall into one of those categories or helped a parent with that?
You know, what an interesting question. I want to say no, but I want to give the caveat that there have been some people that I've treated that I think have like an undiagnosed autism. Because, you got to think with adults, when we were kids, that was not tested quite so much,
No,
right?
no.
Like, I guess in my early adulthood was when, Asperger's was just becoming kind of,
Mhm.
a thing, right? And then it turned into, putting that on autism spectrum disorder. So I guess what I'm getting at is I think that I have worked with adults who are on the autism spectrum, somewhere, and just not known it. So that's sort of a vague answer to your question, but
No,
maybe I haven't clearly done that.
no, I was wondering because I have heard conversations of changing dietary things for these kids and it having positive effects on it. So I was wondering if you had kind of tapped that market a little bit, and seen any results with that because a lot of kiddos are affected with that, and a lot of moms that'll see this, will wonder. So
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I probably drive my own kids crazy. I mean, I take a very compassionate approach as far as parenting and nutrition. There's just a certain amount that, I'm going to show them and demonstrate for them. And then there's a certain amount they're going to just figure out on their own. Um, but what I guess my point there was I was thinking about earlier in the conversation when you mentioned ADD or ADHD. That is a real thing. And then also at the same time, there are a lot of people who have tendencies that look like ADD or ADHD, and actually, for some of those people, it's not true ADD or ADHD. It's let's manage a little bit through nutrition, um, and though some of those things will subside. I mean, that's very individual, but I think there are a lot of things that mistakenly get labeled as ADHD.
well, when you were talking about brain fog and stuff like that, and oh, I just can't pay attention. Like I can't watch a whole movie, and there's so many ways that these things kind of look or mimic those kind of things, and maybe they are gut health, maybe they are different things, and so that's why I have people on like you that kind of talk about that and look at different ways because a doctor's always going to want to treat the symptom. There's always a doctor there and there's always a medication to give. And if there's a different way of doing things, why not try it? It's your health. But on my show, my guest always gets the last word. So I'm going to shut up and give you the mic.
I mean, I love that you brought it up. I mean, I think the other thing that comes up for me is, a lot of women that I've worked with, they're not looking specifically at, ADHD or something like that, but they, are clearly having brain fog and hitting that wall in the afternoons in particular. And I love, there's so many of those women that their goal also has been to lose weight, to maybe like lose that last 15 or 20 pounds that they just can't seem to get rid of. And for those women, usually I end up having them eat more. They've been depriving themselves without knowing it. They end up eating more and they lose weight once they start eating more and we're working together. So they actually lose weight. But what I'm getting at also is that what I often see with those women too is that they are not having that brain fog and that afternoon wall that they were hitting before. So maybe the goal was to lose 15 or 20 pounds. We end up eating more. We're eating healthier now, and they have mental clarity like they have never had before.
And that can be priceless. Thank you again for coming on my show, Miss Lauren Callahan. It was an absolute pleasure. Can you stick around after the show for a second?
I would love to. Yeah.
Thank you.